This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hello everyone, Andy Pickering here. Welcome to the holiday edition of the Crypto Conversation. We're republishing some of the best episodes of 2021. This one is with Tom Bilyeu, who is the CEO of Impact Theory. He's a motivational speaker, and he's a he's an NFT guy, really. This is a fascinating podcast. This is actually one of my faves of 2021, I think, just because Tom is such a good talker and he really does an incredible job in this podcast of explaining, I guess, the value proposition, the product proposition, the potential proposition of NFTs, and why he's so inspired by their potential, and just hearing him talk about how he wants to build the next Disney and his thoughts on anime. Man, it's Tom really goes hard in this episode. I think you'll love it. It's a fantastic conversation. Just before we get into it, let's learn about our show sponsor, Prime XBT, and then we'll chat with Tom. Prime XBT, of course, is an award-winning Bitcoin-based trading platform with over 50 assets, including crypto, forex, commodities, and indices. And to provide the highest level of liquidity, Prime XBT aggregates feeds from 12 industry-leading exchanges and data providers. Prime XBT offers high leverage, going up to 100x on crypto assets and as high as 1000x for the traditional markets, with an interface that is suitable for both professional and beginner traders. Prime XBT is also home to a co-vesting platform which allows users to apply the copy trading strategies of the most successful professional traders. All right. Just check them out today at primexbt.com. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course. But for now, it is on with the show. My guest today is Tom Bilyeu. Tom is the co-founder and CEO of Impact Theory and the co-founder of Quest Nutrition. Now, on Tom's Twitter bio, Tom says that he is going hard on NFTs and the metaverse. So really excited to talk to you. Hey, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, man. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Tom, look, I mean, you are here to talk NFTs, the metaverse, and a new NFT marketplace that you guys are working on. And I think this is for, collectors and fans of anime and manga. So, yeah, really excited to dig into all of this. But before we do, you're a very interesting and intriguing character yourself. Now, a lot of people watching or listening to this will know who you are, but a lot won't as well. A lot of crypto people can have their blinkers on. So for the benefit of anyone else, love it, Tom, if you could just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So Tom Bilyeu, and I got into business because I was trying to get into film, and I had written a screenplay. It got turned into a feature-length film, and I was very unhappy with how it came out. Met these two very successful entrepreneurs, and they said, if you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. So we're going to start a company. Why don't you come with us and get rich? I thought, amazing. Let's do exactly that. And I thought it would take 18 months. It took 15 years, but it did work. We started multiple companies. The one that we just exited was a company called Quest Nutrition. We took that from not existing to being valued at over $1 billion in 5 years. And then I exited that to now finally start the studio that I got into this in the beginning to build, which is called Impact Theory. And people probably know me, if they know me at all, from my mindset side of things. So I have an interview show called Impact Theory where I bring on just amazing thinkers that have been extraordinarily successful in their areas and try to show people that there is a consistent set of ideas that make people successful. And if you embody those in your life, you too can be successful. And then the other side, which probably takes up closer to 70% of my energy, is building the next Disney. And so we write stories, comic books, we're developing for TV, film, and just trying to put out really good stories with one message and one message only. And we look at Disney, and they told the same kind of story from 1,000 different angles. And by doing that, they created the most magical place on earth. And so our goal is, by telling one kind of story from 1,000 different angles, we want to create the most empowering place on earth. And so impact theory is called impact theory because this telling stories is my theory on how to impact people at scale.
I love it. All right. Well, so Tom, you've already had a lot of success with these various companies, and it sounds like you have a plan to continue to make impact at scale. So, you sound like a busy guy. When did you start to dabble in the wonderful world of crypto and blockchain? What was your entry point, and how did you get bitten by the crypto bug?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I have an employee, shout out to David Kim, who just kept saying, Tom, you must look at crypto. And I was like, David, I'm not an investor. I know how to make money. I have no interest in learning how to invest money. And just that sort of having blinders on, as you were talking about earlier, has actually served me very well to get obsessed about something, to go all in. And so, I've had the kind of success that it's like, look, I'm never going to have to worry about money again. So I just couldn't get my head around it, but he wouldn't let up, and he just kept going. And he's like, Tom, I'm telling you, you're going to miss something major. You don't want to sleep on this invest. And kept ignoring him. And then 6 years ago, a guy had introduced me to the idea of digital rarity. And now, of course, we call it NFTs, but back then that didn't exist. I looked at that and said, yo, that's going to change my business forever. And so I immediately understood that as a product guy. And so then when, about 6 or 7 months ago, when NFTs popped back up into my life, I was like, whoa, this is that digital rarity that he told me about. We need to go all in on this. And so we immediately shifted the focus of the company, and I started looking at the technology. Now, as I began learning about the technology, that led me to the broader crypto world. And I was like, whoa, okay, now by understanding the technology, I understand why people are hyped about Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink are sort of my trifecta. Nice. And so I'm looking at that going, I understand the technology behind this, and now I'm excited about it. Now I see why I'd want to invest. Then, of course, I ended up finding Michael Saylor, and who I've actually interviewed for the podcast. Yes. Amazing. And he is so compelling that I was like, all right. And I just started investing, millions of dollars into crypto, and just really believe in the thesis as very eloquently explained by Michael Saylor. He does a way better job than I could ever hope to do. And I care a lot about a revolution that I see happening around, I'll call it the internet. So the internet has slowly democratized access to information. And that is something I'm very excited about. And I won't take up time because I don't know it'll be interesting to your audience, but I'll just, as a super quick nutshell, I've worked in the inner cities for a lot of time. And when you're in the inner cities, you realize intelligence is evenly distributed, but mindset is not. And ultimately, your behaviors follow your mindset. And therefore, if your mindset is broken, your behaviors are broken. And now that the information, you can get a Harvard course on YouTube for free. So it's like all of that information is truly becoming democratized, and you're getting incredible people like Wallow267 or the Wall Street Trapper that are people that came up hard, went to prison, and now we're showing people how you can take this freely available information, like what's going on in crypto, like what's going on in NFTs, and you can radically change your financial outlook just by getting some knowledge. And so that, as I learned about crypto, became extraordinarily passionate about getting people to understand the technology. And so because it's so useful in my business and it speaks to my heart in terms of what it makes available to other people, we've literally as a company just gone in. I mean, we're just all the way in.
Amazing. And look, I mean, yeah, I'm super interested in this kind of macro view of all these different technological shifts. And it really does tie back to this idea of the metaverse. And we'll talk more about all that. I want to dig into it. First, though, let's kind of cover off some of the specifics in terms of your plans, Tom, with with NFTs, what you're building, and maybe start. I know you've worked on, I think, the Neon Future stuff, right? With a very famous DJ. So maybe that's a kind of a jumping off point.
Yeah, so for anybody who's a creative, if you understand what's happening at the technology level, NFTs is a game changer. And so Steve and I had gotten together several years ago now. At this point, we created a web comic called Neon Future, which is based on his album series called Neon Future, and really threw ourselves into it. Like, I mean, we were trying to create a gigantic IP that, you know, is either animated or live action, is the biggest of the big, seen by hundreds of millions of people. Like we went into it very, very seriously. It was not meant to be like, oh, this will be kitschy and, you know, we'll do something fun that bears the name of your album series. It was, Steve is a very creative person.
We're talking about Steve Aoki. Sorry, to interrupt.
Yeah,
listeners, Steve Aoki. Correct. Yes.
Glad you said that. Yes. And we told this story that I'm extraordinarily proud of. It has lived its entire life cycle in the top 10 of its category on Webtoon. Webtoon, in terms of scale, it gets billions of views, not millions. I mean, it's just an absolutely massive platform. So for us to have done, we've had 2 comics out now on Webtoon. We have 3 more in development. And both of them live their entire life cycle in the top 10 of their categories. So, you know, we've taken it very seriously. As creatives, when you see what NFTs are, you understand the tech, you know where this is going. It will radically change the way that IP holders think of productizing their stories. So there was just an absolute renaissance in animation in the 80s in the US because you could sell from the shelf, as they called it. So you could advertise the cartoon on the shelf and you could advertise the toys in the cartoon. And so NFTs have re-given us that ability. And for that reason, I am just, you know, beyond committed to creating NFTs. There's a whole host of other reasons. But so that's why, as our first NFT project, Steve Aoki and I did a amazing collaboration with this artist named Maciek Kusiera, who's done work for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ghost in the Shell, just like the who's who of projects. When you see his portfolio, it's ridiculous. And he had helped us create some of the visualizations for Neon Future imagined as a film. And so we already knew what it was like to work with them, which is amazing. And so we did a collaboration, which did very well for us and was really, really exciting. And was our first sort of technological step into the space. And now we're developing well beyond that, but that's where it started.
And Tom, I can see behind you. There's you've got various collectible action figures. I can't quite see quite who you've got there, but I imagine they come from various sci-fi universes, the wonderful worlds of anime and manga. And I know this kind of, you know, this mythology and storytelling is deep across everything you do. And you know, you talked about wanting to build the next Disney, right? So, you know, let's just. Anime and manga, like how deep into this culture are you? And I know Steve obviously is as well. And what is it about, I guess, you know, cyberpunk and all these incredible fictional worlds that speak to you?
All right, that's a dangerous question to ask somebody as obsessed with anime and manga as I am. So I will trust you to bring us back if I go too far. The long and the short of it is, so I am trying to really impact culture. So I'm trying to sway people into thinking in a new way because your mindset's going to govern your entire life. And my success is not an echo of like innate abilities. I'm not a born entrepreneur. It's not an echo of my IQ. Many people will tell you that the SATs is a good proxy for IQ. And I took it back in the 90s and got a 990, which back then was just like catastrophically, embarrassingly low. I took it twice. That's my combined score. So I'm not coming at things as like, oh, I'm ultra bright, or I just have natural entrepreneurial insights. That's not me. I am the result of the human animal being the ultimate learning machine. And so I have just applied myself to learning and getting better. So I'm trying to teach people, hey, you can learn and get better. So I tried just telling them, think like this, act like this, and it'll change your life forever, just as it changed mine. 2% of people do it, changes their life forever. It's very gratifying. It's amazing. But 98% don't. And I'm a scale guy. So I'm like, well, I know what to do for the 2%, but how do I reach the 98%? That's story. So then I looked at who's doing story best. And when you compare the Western comic market, because I needed to start, I can't go straight to film and TV it's just too expensive, because in any creative endeavor, you're going to fail roughly 19 out of 20 times. So if I were trying to do TV or film, I'd just go out of business. So I needed somewhere where I could make sure that I was as good as I think I am at that, build a community around it. So that was going to be comics. We went to Western comics first. To give you an idea of the scale difference between Western comics and Eastern comics, anime and manga, one title in manga, it's called Demon Slayer, outsells the entire Western market. One. So Demon Slayer outsells Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and everything else combined.
Wow.
So that's where I was like, whoa, there's just something different happening in the East in terms of how they tell stories. I read a book called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. I cannot recommend that book enough. It is not for the faint of heart, as it's basically looking at what Google searches tell us about human sexuality, but it is so fascinating.
Wow.
And the most interesting thing to come out of that, and brace yourself for anybody that's sensitive, but between the ages of 11 and 15, all sexual fetishes are developed. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, if I'm trying to change your mind, you go through this incredible, culturally malleable period from 11 to 15, and you lock it in. And what the Japanese do well is they target, they have a name for it. For boys, it's called shonen, which the literal translation is the few years. And it's 11 to 15. And it's that age range where you can really impact them. They're, sort of all the complexities of adulthood haven't happened yet, but you're really coming into your own as a person. And so I just thought, whoa, I'm reading this book, A Billion Wicked Thoughts. It's talking about how we form these cultural ideas in our head, that they happen in this very specific period. The Japanese aim specifically at that period with things meant for boys or things meant for girls. Like, they don't try to blend them, which is what the US market tries to do. And I just thought, okay, cool. We're going to go into anime and manga, but I didn't grow up on it. So now I've got to immerse myself in that world. So for the last, call it 3 years, I've clocked an unreasonable amount of hours reading anime and manga. And once you develop an understanding of what makes something good, you can really be a connoisseur of it. Now you can appreciate it. And so I have fallen in love with anime and manga in a way I would have never predicted. But I am just completely captured by it creatively, by the way that they tell stories, which is very different. I had to write a best practices document for people, from the writers that write for us, to explain the difference, because in the US, we don't have a lot of Eastern trained writers. So it's like, I had to learn it well enough to teach it. So, just like this whole thing has just captured my imagination. And now you combine it with what's going on in the world of blockchain and NFTs. And it's like, I feel like we have a thesis that if I'm right about there's a reason that these Eastern style stories have taken over, and I'm right about the blockchain, that it will change everything forever. You put these together and I've really got a shot at beating Disney, which is ultimately my game. I think it's going to take a long time. I don't want anybody to think I'm pulling it off in the next 3 years, but I really think that my thesis, if correct, is strong enough to propel us forward.
Wow. That is absolutely fascinating, Tom. Look, a lot to dig into there. So, and I mean, I have heard that before, that, people's kind of, not to dwell too deep into it, but sexual fetishes, that's where they come from, that uniquely impressionable age. So you'd have to be careful. You wouldn't want to have too many erotic encounters with octopuses or anything like that as a young boy or girl, because things can get weird. Fascinating.
Real fast.
What is your thesis then? So expand on that. How do you go about building the next Disney at scale, and what are some of the core differences between this Eastern and Western style of storytelling, and how can you translate that to Western audiences?
So the big thing to understand is that whatever memo about like every project needs to appeal to everybody and we need to like round the edges off, the Japanese didn't get that memo. So they asked themselves, what do 11 to 15-year-old girls like? Cool, let's give them all of that, right? So it's all emotion, it's all intrigue. It'll be an entire 14-volume, not chapter, 14-volume manga where the climax is the couple finally holds hands, okay? That's never going to fly for 11 to 15-year-old boys, right? So 11 to 15-year-old boys, they want to see, scantily clad, sexy women and fighting. And that's it. And so the Japanese were like, well, if that's what they want, let's give it to them, but let's wrap it with these ideas of self-empowerment. So you get what are called battle manga or shonen manga, where the whole point, shonen is the word that translates into the few years. And so you get this shonen battle manga where as you read it, you're like, whoa, like this is actually pretty deep, but it's wrapped in things that kids of that age are going to be really drawn to. They don't try to be highbrow. So there's a whole thing that happened in the 90s for Western comics where all the top artists left Marvel and DC and founded a company called Image. Everybody bought in on the speculator boom. They ended up overbuying. It put a lot of stores out of business. It almost collapsed the entire Western comic market. So then they couldn't take chances anymore. So they just started making comics for the people that were already buying them, which meant that they stopped going after kids. So once you stop going after kids, no new lifeblood comes in. The Japanese, the biggest maker of this stuff is called Shonen Jump. And they made a very specific decision not to age up, that they were going to keep making things for 11 to 15-year-olds, which kept that vitality. It kept people coming into the marketplace. And they did a lot of other things. I'm really oversimplifying, but like, they just kept making things specifically for boys of a certain age, for girls of a certain age, and nary the twain shall meet, which meant the boys just naturally gravitated to it. So it stayed a very healthy market. Girls naturally gravitated. It stayed a very healthy market. So they get people that start young and then age up, whereas the Western market is just like back in the 90s, it locked in and they've just been aging up and out. Then there's a lot of focus on friendship, on empowerment. And again, empowering in the way that a boy wants to be empowered through fighting. And then empower and getting good with women. And then for girls, empowered in the way that they want to be through relationships, through being able to tame sort of the mythos of Beauty and the Beast, right? So you've got this guy, he's sort of the wild man and he has to be tamed by the love of a woman, right? Things that now have become like, whoa, you can't really talk like that in the Western market. Again, they never bought into that. So now you've got Westerners responding to it and being like, yo, I want more of this. And so they're just importing it like crazy. So that's like the quick thumbnail sketch of why I think that performs. It's more in line with the true psyche, not what we wish the psyche were. Okay. One of the most popular manga for boys right now is something called Chainsaw Man. And it is literally the existential dread of discovering sexuality as a boy. So the whole manga is driven by, at first he wants to touch a girl's boob, then he wants to kiss her. And then of course, as it escalates from there. And that's like, but one of the like richest emotional journeys in a book. I mean, it's really phenomenally handled well. It's really quite extraordinary, but in a way that an 11 to 15-year-old boy can get behind. So I just buy into that. Line up with what human psychology really is, not what you wish it would be, what it really is. And then you can put a message of empowerment into this stuff. So that's why I think it will do well. And then we're marrying it to technology in a way that nobody else is doing. We're just way faster adopters of technology. I've been going hard trying to convince Japan to give me their licenses to marry with my blockchain technology. That's a very slow road, let me assure you. So we'll just move faster. I think we're more in tune with what people really are like. And then we've got the funding to see it through.
Incredible. It sounds incredible, Tom. So tell me then, what's your vision for NFTs and the blockchain, and how do you tie all this together? And kind of, we're moving towards talking more about the metaverse, but so yeah, what role do NFTs and blockchain play in your vision of the kind of the next Disney that you're building?
So the way that people are responding to NFTs should tell you everything you've ever wanted to know. You can buy a toy, but now that toy has resale value, right? So I think a lot about kids. So I'll make references that probably make more sense if you have hold that image in your head. So you're creating something where, like, I'll give you one idea that we don't yet have in development, but like is real, something I fantasize about doing. So I, as the business owner, am constantly reminding myself that I must at all times avoid a mortality event. That's like rule number one of business. Don't run out of money. Okay, so I need to be able to step into this. So if I want to do gaming, which is eating the entertainment world, how do I get into gaming without, trying to build a AAA studio from nothing? I'd have to raise capital. I don't want to do that. So, okay, take an NFT project. I love Mecha. So it's robots, right? So I'm going to take, let's say, an NFT series of cards, whatever, maybe it's 10,000 run of generative art, whatever it is. I create all these robot parts that you can then put together into one robot fighter. And now you have an NFT. And hey, maybe it's just art. And if it's raining in real life, it's raining in your NFT, right? Oh, wow. So my NFT takes cues from the real world. That's already the coolest toy I've ever had because it, reacts to the real world. Then on top of that, well, what if I could then battle? So I spent all this time buying these parts that have utility, putting them together. So now I have a unique robot that's unique visually, but also is unique from its attributes. And so now I fight that against another robot that somebody built. Now imagine that my NFT of this, my art NFT of this that I have on my phone or hanging on my wall, it now looks different, whether it won or lost. And so now I have this like heartbreak if, I show people, man, I lost and my robot looks defeated and battered. And the only way to restore it is to fight it again. And now that win-loss record's on the blockchain. So now if I'm winning a lot, I can actually raise the value. And I'm a 12-year-old kid. Now I can sell this. And all of a sudden you've got kids that are, making, $100, $200 a month, which I would have killed for as a kid. You'll have some kids that are making even more than that. So now you just get this relationship of the things that you invest in are actually yours. And anybody that underestimates that, I think is going to get caught off guard by what's about to happen, because we see kids pouring thousands of dollars every birthday, every Christmas. Mom and dad, buy me skins in Fortnite. You don't own those, right? You're essentially renting them. You get to wear them, but if they take them away or you want to sell them, good luck. You have to go like behind the company's back and they can shut you down if they figure out that you're doing it. So it's like now that just becomes a part of the ethos. So not only did it let me stair step in, but I think that as a developer, because I had NFTs to sell you, I have, utility to sell you. Maybe there's a token or something. So every time you battle, we get a small piece. So there's just all these economics along the way that let you stair step into this stuff, but also going back to this idea of aligning yourself better with our own psychology. People would rather own it. Putting them in control, giving them something that they can sell, I think will put them more in the driver's seat. They're going to spend more money because they feel this is mine. I can do what I want with it. So it is radically evolving the way that as a maker, I think about toys, and radically evolving, or products, a better way to say it, radically evolving the way that my customer thinks of products, the way that it integrates with community, the way that it can unlock things. It's not a product that's like doubled in quality. It is a step function change that will open up a world that none of us, not even myself, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this, none of us can accurately predict just how transformative this will be.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Tom. And, anyone who is listening to this and is a gamer, or as I am, the parent of a gamer, you can just see that, kids today, they're so much more interested in V-Bucks and Fortnite, or what are they, Roblox and Roblox. And to them, that kind of virtual currency and collecting skins is just the most natural thing in the world. And so all that we're talking about, Tom, is these are the signs that point to the metaverse beginning to spring up all around us, right? And, everyone has a slightly different idea of what the metaverse is, depending on, what kind of movie content or book content that they may have consumed, right? But, you're a sci-fi guy, so you know this better than anyone. Have you read Matthew Ball's Metaverse series of essays?
No, but tell me more, because I'm obsessed with this stuff.
Well, I'll put a link in the show notes, because Matthew Ball so he's been writing a series of metaverse essays, and he's even actually started a metaverse ETF, so that I guess accredited investors in the US would have easy access to that ETF. But I think Mark Zuckerberg last week, he was on the Verge podcast, and he was talking about how in 5 years' time he sees Facebook as literally transitioning from being known as a social media company to being known as a metaverse company. And he cited Matthew Ball's work in that as well. So listeners, if you're not familiar with Matthew Ball, just Google Matthew Ball and you'll find access to that. But yeah, Tom, how do you think about the metaverse? What would sort of your early thinking be on what the metaverse is, and what are the early signs that you see?
Yeah, so we bought land as a company in Sandbox because, one, I think there's huge marketing opportunities now, because I think people have to think about the metaverse right now is so early. I think we're still quite a few years away from Ready Player One, which I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast is game for. But we still got a long way to go from a technological infrastructure standpoint. But right now, there's so much early curiosity. It self-selects for people that are into this space. And so the ability to market a project, so take what we do. So we create a comic, and now I turn that into NFTs, and I want to create an experience inside of Sandbox, right? So you can go in and game and learn about the different characters, learn about the worlds. You could walk into a room, and instead of just displaying a bunch of cool NFT art that I've bought, I can display like the pitch decks, for instance, that we create for the studios when we go pitch this project. And so you can see the concept art, you can see the evolution of the IP. I can announce when a new episode drops. And because we're a digital only studio, so when we create a comic, it's digital already. So you could go in and read what would look like a life-size version of the comic. So it's just all this cool stuff that you can do. And as every step goes, there's something neat that you could do now. So right now, you could go put billboards inside of a space in Decentraland. Very soon, you're going to be able to build these experiences out in Sandbox, and people are putting an insane amount of energy and effort into making the building tools very easy. And then that gives you the ability to just keep evolving with the technology until it becomes, first it'll be with the immersive VR, and it sounds like Facebook is going to do their part to make sure that that comes sooner rather than later. And then, it really becomes this seamless exchange between you have an NFT that gives you access to a certain area on one of these lands, which then allows you to play a game that nobody else can, as, by the way, the Meebit avatar that you bought as an NFT, and you can download, different dance moves or motions or different swords to play in the game. It will all be so integrated. And then AR, which I also think AR might be the thing that I'm most excited about because it's so near term. Yes. But just think about this. Google, everybody's speculating, but I'm going to guess Google Glass comes out. Sorry, not Google Glass. Apple's glasses, AR glasses, will come out in the next 24 months, maybe less. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, I promise that you're going to put your glasses on. I'm going to be able to say, hey, when somebody's looking at me, I want my favorite NFT to always be behind my right shoulder, or I want to be wearing this outfit, or I want to have this mask on. That's an NFT. Now, I know how people are going to flex using their NFTs. Now this becomes imagine, right now, people with money, if they're into flexing, they'd rather buy a car than a house. Now, to me, that's always crazy because I can't, or don't want anyway, to live in the car. So I've always been about houses, right? At least I can live in it. Nobody may ever see it, but I can live in it. Now, whatever it is that you want to use to flex, you can literally have float behind you. So as a mecha enthusiast, I could have my life-size mecha, 3 stories, 4 stories tall, walking behind me in VR. How cool is that? That the people that don't have the glasses, they won't know it's there. But for anybody who's in the know, when they walk up and see, and they see that I have it, or I could even do something like this. If you have a mecha avatar behind you, then you see mine. But if you don't, you don't. If you have a car, you see my car, right? The way that we'll be able to signal to other people, to find people that are sort of in tribe. This gets so interesting so fast. So yeah, that is near term. I think that's sub 24 months.
Again, I could not agree more, Tom. And so, a lot of people, Ready Player One is the sort of the easiest to imagine idea of the metaverse, but that is obviously some time away. But the metaverse really just means a kind of a living experience that exists, and it never pauses or ends. It's just consistently accessible for anyone in real time, and it spans both digital and physical, right? Private and public networks and experiences, open and closed economic platforms, and it needs to be interoperable across everything. So, but that's really what we're talking about, and it is coming sooner than we think. All right. As we start to finish off, Tom, the one other thing that I thought was really interesting when I was just looking into some of your background is, you talked about this book. What is a book and a documentary series by Joseph Campbell, the Power of Myth, right? And we sort of alluded to some of this before, but it's just, it struck me. I'm sure you've read *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari, and he talks about it as well. The *Sapiens* thesis was that it's humanity's ability to construct and create collective fictions that we all buy into, and that is what allows human consciousness to cooperate together. And that is kind of the key to technological advancement, evolution, whatever you want to call it. And the example of that would be money is simply a collective fiction, right? And so is religion, obviously. And I think Joseph Campbell was a big influence on George Lucas and Star Wars, right?
No doubt. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, that book changed my life. It really came to me right at the right time. I was about to get married, and I was fretting about, how many marriages ended in divorce. And in that book, he said, I have a hypothesis about why that happens. And one is that there are no real profound coming of age rituals anymore. So there's no demarcation point between being a child and being an adult. And then the marriage rituals themselves have become watered down. And, he goes and talks about tribes that do still coming of age rituals. And I was like, whoa. And I thought, okay, I missed my chance for a coming of age ritual at the time I was in my mid-20s. And I thought, but I'm about to get married, and I want to be a different human being before my marriage and after my marriage. And I want to completely remove as an option exiting that marriage, so that I'm very conscious to make sure that my marriage is thriving and happy and the best thing that ever happened to me, because I wouldn't stay in it if it were toxic. So I have to work really hard to make sure that it never goes there. And that meant that I needed to go through some kind of ritual. So I decided to go through a ritualistic scarification. And I needed to be something that scared me. I needed it to be permanent, and I needed it to be painful. And so I decided to get a tattoo, something that I never thought that I would get. At the time I did it, needles were my second biggest fear. So I thought, okay, I'm terrified of doing this. It's going to hurt like hell, and it's going to be forever. And ended up doing that. And it's been extraordinary. I've been married for 19 years, and I've been with my wife for 21. So something in there worked. And that was all from the power of myth.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, let's finish this off, Tom. So I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with a very quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it? All right.
I'm ready.
Just want your hot takes, quick, snappy answers, Tom. Where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I'm much closer to Bitcoin maximalist, but really I'm into three things. I'm into Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink.
I love it. All right. Well, Tom, what would you say is your firmest conviction, a crypto opinion?
Oh, that it is the future, and that it will be measured in trillions of dollars. I'm hoping for 100 trillion. I think it will overtake real estate.
I love it. All right. Well, Tom, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So look, whatever you like here, blockchain, NFTs, Metaverse, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
Ooh, in 10 years' time, the honest answer is it will be a technological singularity beyond which we cannot predict. So I don't know. It will look so different than it looks today. But if people think of integration as the key word, so that buying something means something in the metaverse. So I have this thing, it unlocks this. I see things that other people don't see because I have this thing, and I've shown that I'm in group. So that idea of community. So I'll give one brief example so people will get the kind of thing that I'm imagining. So you watch a movie, you think it's amazing. You go buy an NFT from that movie that you love. Now, as you're walking down the street, randomly on a door that you never would have imagined, it says, "Hey, Tom, knock here." And you're like, what the hell? You go over, of course, it may not say your real name. It probably say whatever your crypto name is. So whatever that name is, knock here. You knock, you open it, and you go into some like crazy, unique VR experience you didn't even know existed. And that kind of really small, fractionalized, intimate community that's based on something you hold in your wallet. That will begin to give people an idea of the kind of ways that doors will unfold before you. And nothing will anymore be what it seems. So I'm already today in 2021 thinking about doing an overlay on my house, so that in AR, if you held your phone up and tried to take a picture of my house, you'd see something entirely different than what you see with the naked eye. If I'm thinking about that in 2021, you can imagine once we all have glasses and we're walking around, the level of personal communication that we can do will be extraordinary. Where VR will be insane. Anything that can be put onto the blockchain will be. So I have a phrase that I use a lot, which is, if it can be turned into math, you should turn it into math. So much is going to be turned into math, put in these contracts, put on the blockchain, and the creativity that we're already seeing happen there is breathtaking.
Brilliantly articulated, Tom. That was fantastic. All right. Well, the opposite of that, of course, is a quote by William Gibson, who, of course, said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
I mean, the funny thing is, the easy answer is the blockchain. The vast majority of humanity, maybe they've heard the words, but they don't know what it is. I think 2% of the world has a cryptocurrency? Like, that's crazy. Yep. So I can't think of anything more revolutionary than the blockchain, and virtually nobody knows about it.
I love it. All right. We're almost done here, Tom, but it's time to get weird, time to zoom out. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I could not be more techno-optimistic. So I don't believe in utopias. Everything's a trade-off, but I am definitely, things will be better and better and better as we go. I have no doubt there will be rocky times. There always are. So this is not me predicting like a smooth trajectory to joy. We're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to want it. We're going to have to overcome some natural inclinations for the human animal to make some poor cognitive decisions. But I think we get it together and we move in the right direction. And I see us inevitably merging with technology in ways large and small. We already have cochlear implants, so we know it's real. But in the not too distant future, you're going to have, thanks to Elon Musk and Neuralink, you're going to have true computer brain interfaces. And then where we go from there is truly impossible to predict.
The singularity is coming. All right.
No doubt.
Let's finish this off, Tom. Finally, what is, and you're a good one to ask this question. It'll be a hard one for you to answer, I predict. What is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
Oh, any one of those?
Anyone. Easiest
question you've asked me, The Matrix. Right. I could not be more obsessed.
Yes.
That movie owns my heart and soul. It is the dominant metaphor for my life. So yeah, The Matrix.
All right. And yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that makes sense because one of your goals is simply to pull people out of the matrix, right?
There it is.
All right. This has been superb, Tom. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Just to finish off, please tell the listeners any final thoughts you have and tell them where to go to really start to engage with you and your various platforms and how they can follow your adventures in the NFT world.
So hit me up on Twitter. I am super active there at Tom Bilyeu. My name's spelled weird, but if you get to TOMBIL, I should almost certainly show up. And yeah, that would be the best place. And from there, I'll have links to all the other cool stuff I'm doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. All the best and bye for now.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, that's today's show. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. And if you want to get at me, just drop me an email, andy@bravenewcoin.com. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave